Yo, what's up guys, Alf here, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to hit rank 15 with on the arena ladder. As you can see from the screenshot here, I'm currently 48-5 with this list, so it's been performing incredibly well. The deck's felt so strong, and I definitely think I could have spent longer grinding with the deck to try and push higher on the ladder, but I'm really happy with this exact 75. I don't think I'd make any changes going forwards, unless the mirror becomes really popular, in which case I might make a few tweaks, but I'm really happy with the 75, and with there being so many different decks that I wanted to try out in Historic and Timeless, where I haven't really had that much chance to test yet, I didn't want to spend too long grinding on one deck just to try and get higher on the ladder. I'd rather just get this video out there once I feel like I've come up with a good 75 and then move on to other ideas so I can get more videos out there, if that makes sense. Now before I get into it, there's going to be a link down in the description that will have the importable deck list if you want to try it out for yourself, and I'm also going to be writing an article on this deck for MTGAzone Premium, so if you want a more in-depth look at this deck with a full sideboard guide, tips and tricks, and how I change the deck for best of one, I'll have a link down to that guide in the description once it comes out. Will probably be out either late this weekend or early next week, so keep your eyes out for that if you're a premium member. But anyway, with that all out of the way, this is my Naya Primal Prayers combo deck in Historic, and this is a combo deck that has an infinite way to win with Primal Prayers, but the deck also just has a really solid fair backup game plan as well, and you can very consistently combo off, oftentimes on turn 3 thanks to Malevolent Rumble. So key card in this deck is Primal Prayers. 4 mana enchantment gets you 2 energy, and then once this is in play, you can cast your creatures with flash, which is really big, and you can cast them for a single energy if they cost 3 or less. So the combo in this deck is a 3-card combo involving Primal Prayers, Guide of Souls, and Sigardian Evangel. So if we have Primal Prayers in play, then we can cast Guide of Souls, and then we cast Sigardian Evangel, enters the battlefield, which gains us a life and gains us an energy off Guide of Souls. Then we conjure another Sigardian Evangel into our hand, so we've already got a loop going here where we basically make infinite 3/1s, gain infinite life, and then the energy just allows us to keep looping this. Now, this is a concern normally because these sorts of combos where you have to wait a turn to attack, like Scurry Oak in the Heliod combo, for example, are usually very vulnerable to sweepers and also opposing combo decks that can combo off on their turn before you get a chance to attack. However, the big difference with this particular deck is because Primal Prayers you can cast the creatures at instant speed, you can then also use Sigardian Evangel to tap down all of your opponent's creatures and lands during their upkeep to basically time walk them to allow you to untap and attack. So the way this combo works is you go Primal Prayers, Guide of Souls, Sigardian Evangel, cast as many as you want to make a really wide board, then set a stop during your end step, and when the triggers go on the stack to discard all the copies of Sigardian Evangel, you can then flash in that last copy during your end step, which means that the copy that generates won't be discarded until the end of your opponent's turn, and then you just set a stop during the opponent's upkeep, flash this in repeatedly, tap down all the creatures, tap down all their lands, then you can set a stop during the opponent's end step, so when you would discard the Evangel, you just flash it in again, and then you've got them all free during your turn in case you wanted to go off again. So even though these combos where you usually have to wait until the opponent's turn made me initially think that Ominous Travel would be better, the fact that you can do this at instant speed to tap down all of your opponent's lands basically makes this a guaranteed kill the majority of the time anyway. And to be honest, most of the decks in Historic right now can't beat an infinite board and infinite life anyway. There are very few decks that can beat that, but being able to tap down your opponent's lands is just a really good way to counteract that, if that makes sense. And the other really nice thing about this combo is that all of the cards are individually good as well. That's what really separates this from a lot of other combo decks. Primal Prayers is a really good fair card, especially because we have a bunch of other energy generators in the deck. Guide of Souls has its own way to utilize the energy it produces. You know, I've won a bunch of games just beating down with the Guide of Souls when we have a bunch of energy, buffing our creatures and giving them flying. And then Sigardian Evangel is just really good on its own, and is also just really good with Primal Prayers. Like I said, we've got a bunch of other energy generators like Attune with Aether, Galvanic Discharge, Unstable Amulet, for example. And so we can often have Primal Prayers and Evangel with like 7 or 8 energy, and then just do that same thing where you tap down all of your opponent's lands during the upkeep, and then have like a massive board of Sigardian Evangels, and you can often win without even needing to combo off. So the fact that all of our combo pieces are individually strong really improves consistency. The other really nice thing about this deck is we've got another new card in Recruiter of the Guard that really makes our setting up the combo way more consistent, because it can find both of our combo pieces here. So all we need to assemble really is Primal Prayers alongside Recruiter of the Guard and one of these, and we can combo off, which is really big. You know, if we don't have a third energy, we can just go Primal Prayers, flash in Recruiter of the Guard at the opponent's turn to fetch a Guide of Souls, then cast Guide of Souls and combo off with the Evangel. And if we have Guide of Souls and Recruiter, that's basically the same as Evangel, right? We go Primal Prayers, Guide of Souls, play the Recruiter, search the Evangel, and then just combo off anyway. So Recruiter of the God not only really improves the consistency at which we can assemble the combo, but it also enables us to answer hate pieces very commonly. In the main deck, we have a single Witch Enchanter, which is both a tutorable disenchant to be able to answer, Vexing Bauble or Roiling Vortex or any artifact and enchantment hate the opponent might have, and it's also a fetchable untapped land. So if we have the combo and we just need our 4th land, we can play Recruiter on 3 to fetch Witch Enchanter. We have stuff like Skyclave Apparition in the sideboard to be able to answer creature-based hate cards as well, and then we have a selection of one of tutor targets that we can fetch off it as well. So Recruiter of the Guard not just increases the consistency of the combo, but also enables us to answer hate pieces, which is a really big deal in a combo deck. Then the other 2 cards that I really want to highlight here, first of all, is Malevolent Rumble, and this is one of, if not the best cards in the deck. This card is so good. So this not only searches for all of our combo pieces and any lands if we need them, so it can find Primal Prayers, it can find Evangel, it can find Guide of Souls, it can find Recruiter of the Guard, but then it also produces an Eldrazi that can ramp us. So this enables us to go off on turn 3 pretty consistently, because say we have, Primal Prayers, Guide of Souls, Rumble. If we cast Rumble on 2 and then find a Recruiter of the Guard or an Evangel, we just have all the cards to combo off, and then we can cast Primal Prayers on turn 3 and combo off there as well. So this card is absolutely insane for that reason. But then on top of that, it also puts all of the other cards in the graveyard, which is really great alongside Jarsel as a way to refuel it. Speaking of which, Jarsel is the other kind of engine card in this deck, and this is another card that works super well here. We have a bunch of 1-mana cards that we want to be running anyway that Jarsel is really great at being able to flash back. Like I said, it works super well with Rumble, where it can fuel the graveyard to get other targets in, and then using Jarsel to flash back Rumble enables us to set up the combo super consistently as well. So Jarsel is great here. It also really improves the matchup against decks like Wizards, because post-sideboard we can have 4 Galvanic Discharge, 4 Shove Aside, and Jarsel doubling up all our removal really helps to keep them off the board. So Jarsel, excellent in this deck, great at assembling the combo, great at enabling us to grind into longer games as well, which is really big. And then speaking of which, we have a bunch of 1-mana stuff that we want to be able to use with it. Guide of Souls is really nice to be able to bring back with it, but obviously recasting Guide of Souls off Jarsel, we need the opponent to kill it, which isn't always going to happen. So it's really important for me to have at least 12 cards that are basically guaranteed to go in the graveyard for us to use with Jarsel. Galvanic Discharge is excellent. It's basically just the best in slot for red removal that we have access to in Historic right now. And also it's another way that we can produce excess energy, which is really useful with Primal Prayers, because, if we have Primal Prayers, Sigardian Evangel, and Recruiter of the Guard, we need 3 energy to be able to combo off, so having a spare energy lying around from something like Galvanic Discharge is really huge. Then obviously we've got Unstable Amulet that I'll get to in a second as well, but having excess energy for Unstable Amulet basically just often means an extra card that we can get off it, which is really huge. And also if we have excess energy and we need to be able to kill a bigger creature, especially something like a Vein Ripper or a Shieldred, being able to do that off a 1-mana removal spell is really, really big as well. So this is a huge upgrade to the deck. And then the other 2 cards are basically just consistency enablers. Abundant Harvest is just the best card with Jarsel, right? We can get lands if we need them early, then we can get non-lands. Always great to flash back this off Jarsel, and then we have a very high density of good hits to enable us to find the combo right. We can use it to find Primal Prayers, Recruiters, Sigardian Evangel, Guide of Souls, or Rumble, which is great at finding all of your pieces as well. So Abundant Harvest, phenomenal here. And then Attune with Aether, similar kind of thing to Abundant Harvest. This basically just means that we can run a lower land count initially, then use this to fix our mana, use this to get additional energy, which, like I said, great with Primal Prayers, especially if we're using it fairly with Evangel, great with Unstable Amulet and Galvanic Discharge as well, and obviously really nice with the Jarsel. Then speaking of which, Unstable Amulet, another really, really sick card in this deck, comes down and basically gives us a replacement for it immediately. The card just stays there in exile even if the Unstable Amulet dies, which is really big. And then, like I said, we have a ton of ways to get extra energy, especially if we use Jarsel to flash back Attune with Aether, or if we hit an Attune with Aether off the Unstable Amulet, we can just get a land and then immediately get the D2 energy back to get another card. The ability for this to deal damage does come up as well, right? We can use this to ping the opponent with anything that we hit off exile, particularly if we get it in multiples, and it also pings the opponent every card we flash back from the graveyard off Jarsel, which is really nice, just giving us a bit of extra reach in those fair games where we just need to be able to attack down, especially if we're, beating down with Guide of Souls and giving our creatures +1/+1 and flying, for example. And then the other really nice thing is that it works really well with Primal Prayers, because Primal Prayers doesn't specify that you have to cast the cards from your hand. So say you have Primal Prayers, Guide of Souls, and then you hit an Evangel off the Unstable Amulet, that just enables enables you to combo off straight away, which is really, really huge. So this is great, especially in grindy matchups like against interactive decks and control, but it's just a generically good card, especially when we have so many other energy enablers in the deck. So next up we'll have a look at the mana base. So because we've got 4 Abundant Harvest for Attune with Aether, our actual land count is lower than we would normally have, so only 19 lands plus the Witch Enchanter, so effectively 20, but these really help to smooth our draws early on and ensure that we keep hitting land drops. In terms of the actual lands themselves, I do think it's very important to be running 4 basics for Attune with Aether, because otherwise you're likely to run out, not just because we have 4 copies of Attune with Aether, but also because we're going to be flashing it back with Jarsoul quite a lot. In terms of colours that we need a second copy of, obviously for Primal Prayers we really need to have the second green, but if we're casting Attune with Aether, we already have 1 green source, so I don't think we need a second forest, because we can just find our second green source in the forest itself, if that makes sense. And then in terms of the other colours, white is usually the colour that you would want a second copy of if you're just casting Guardian Evangel fairly, so that's why we have the second planes here. Then the rest of the lands in the mana base are all dual lands. This is really important, especially the mana confluence, because we are slightly below what I would want for the colour requirements. We have 14 green for turn 1 Abundant Harvest and Attune with Aether, which is kind of the minimum you want, and then we only have 13 red and 12 white, which is the best you can really achieve with running 4 dual lands and, you know, running 4 basics and all of the dual lands that we have access to, but that's not really as much of an issue. You know, we're only slightly below percentages on that, and oftentimes we can go Attune with Aether on turn 1 to find a red source for Discharge or find a white source for Guide of Souls or Esper Sentinel, and in the main deck anyway, a lot of matchups you won't want to cast Guide of Souls out early. Oftentimes you want to just hold this in your hand to be able to just combo off, because otherwise if you cast it out early and it gets killed, you can be left without one of your combo pieces once you do have the Primal Prayers, if that makes sense. So that's the main deck overall. Like I said, this deck has felt so fast. It can assemble the combos so consistently. Rumble enables you to combo off on turn 3 very consistently, and the deck has a really good, fair, grindy game plan as well. So this deck feels super powerful and very resilient as well. And then the fact that you can combo off at instant speed with Primal Prayers makes you be able to play around counter spells and wraths in a way that these sort of creature combo decks aren't normally able to, if that makes sense. So then moving on to the sideboard, going to go through all these one-offs that we've got. These are basically all Recruiter of the Guard targets. So Giant Killer is a card I added recently. As you'll see in the gameplay, I was running Elite Spellbinder in this slot for quite a while, but I very rarely brought it in. If other combo decks start seeing more play, then I could definitely see swapping this back for Spellbinder, but I decided to swap it for Giant Killer, specifically against Vein Ripper decks, and also, you know, if the opponent's playing a Reanimator deck with Ceres Emissary or Attractor, for example. This is really nice to have access to as well, but predominantly here for the Vein Ripper decks as a tutorable way for you to be able to kill the Vein Ripper. You can kill it with Discharge, but you need Discharge plus, you know, another 2 energy lying around, which isn't always going to happen. So Killer useful there. Haywire Might is just another way for us to kill artifacts and enchantments, so very good against the Affinity deck. I've seen quite a few of them running the new Kappa Cannoneer, so this is really nice at being able to take out portable holes that take out our early Guide of Souls and stuff, as well as Retrofitter Foundries and stuff like that. And also, obviously, hate cards, artifacts, and enchantments like Vexing Bauble as well. Then we've got Remorseful Cleric as tutorable graveyard hate, you know, again, against Reanimator, Kethis combo, Phoenix, anything like that. This is really useful. Cruel Harpooner specifically for Phoenix, basically, just as a really efficient way to kill stuff like Symmetry Sage and Slickshot Shower, for example. Phyrexian Revoker as a way to shut off Yawgmoth mostly, but, you know, Samwise combo, there's a bunch of new ways that you can build with that. So basically any combo that revolves around activated abilities, and the fact that we can cast this at instant speed off Primal Prayers, right? If you don't have the combo and you got Primal Prayers, you can go Recruiter of the Guard at instant speed, fetch Revoker, cast the Revoker at instant speed to shut off whatever the opponent's trying to do. And then same thing with Skycleave Apparition as well. This is just good at answering any problematic permanent, particularly creatures, because we have the Witch Enchanter and the Haywire Might for artifacts and enchantments. So having Skyclave Apparition as a way that we can take out stuff like, you know, Rampaging Ferocidon or any other hate creatures the opponent might have. And then again, we can do it at instant speed, so we can go, you know, Primal Prayers in play, Recruiter of the Guard, search Apparition, cast Apparition. And then finally we've got Tajik Legion's Valor, which is basically just an alternate win condition that we can fetch off Recruiter of the Guard. And I basically bring this in any matchup that isn't combo or just, you know, basically just super focused on racing. So against decks like Mono Green Devotion or opposing combo decks, I don't bring this in because it's usually too slow, but in basically every other matchup, I like bringing this in because post-sideboard, the opponent is obviously going to be focused on trying to shut you off your combo, and being able to go Recruit of the Guard on 3, search up Tajik, cast Tajik on turn 4, so many decks just can't beat that. Just having this as a one-of can just solo games where the opponent is really focused on stopping the combo, but doesn't have any way to deal with Tajik. So this card has won me so many games, and the opportunity cost of running it as a one-of is so low as well. So this card has been an MVP, particularly post-sideboard. And then the other cards we've got in the sideboard are 4 ofs. First, we've got 4 copies of Esper Sentinel here, which is basically for control. So against control, we obviously want to cut the Galvanic Discharges because they don't really do much in the early game. And I felt like because of Jarsil, I really wanted to have another 1-drop that is likely to die. I think Esper Sentinel is likely to be a prime target for removal. So being able to go Sentinel on 1, and then the opponent might kill it on turn 1 or 2. Well, usually on turn 2, so they don't have to pay the tax. And then being able to go Jarsil on 3, flash it back is really nice. And it's just really nice at just taxing the opponent, making them slow down, or drawing us cards, which helps us assemble the combo more consistently, which is really nice. So Sentinel has felt really good to me in that slot. Obviously, there's a bunch of other cards you could run against control, but being able to get this down on turn 1 is really big when the opponent is definitely going to be focused on countering our more expensive spells like Jarsil and Primal Prayers. And then finally, we've got 4 copies of Shoverside. So this is predominantly here for Wizards, but just any matchup where you need to have a lot of removal. And like I said, the fact that we've got Jarsil alongside 4 Discharge for Shoverside makes those matchups against the creature decks so nice, because we have such a high density of ways to keep them off the board. So that's the deck overall, and this has felt one of the best decks I've ever played in Historic. Now obviously with MH3 coming out and the power level going up, I'm sure there'll be a bunch of other decks that emerge that are really powerful as well, but having a combo where all 3 of your combo pieces are individually strong improves your consistency so much. Being able to combo off at instant speed makes you so resilient as well, and then having a strong, fair, grindy backup game plan makes this deck feel really hard to attack, and is definitely one of the front runners for me to be running in the upcoming qualifier as well. In terms of changes to the deck, like I said, I'm really happy with this 75, but if the mirror match becomes very popular, one card I've been considering running in this sideboard is Curse of Silence, because it's very difficult to find a hate card that isn't that's not symmetrical and would stop you comboing off as well. And I think Curse of Silence is the best idea that I've come up with yet, because you can target the opponent, name Guardian Evangel, and basically just stop them from comboing off. Now, if this does become a common sideboard card, the opponent could just get around that by running a single Ominous Traveller in the sideboard, which enables them to combo off even through the Curse of Silence. So bear that in mind, and definitely let me know in the comments if you have suggestions for other sideboard cards that could be good in the mirror, because if this deck does become a lot more popular, I can see it being really goldfishy, so having a card that can help you break those mirror matches is going to be really important. But either way, decks felt really strong. Next up, I've got some gameplay, just got some matches that I was playing on the ladder so you guys can see it in action. Either way, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Big up. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, I think we can keep this right. We've got Abundant Harvest to get another land on turn 1. Then we can Rumble on turn 2. And then obviously we are missing both of the combo pieces, but Rumble should hopefully help us find at least one of them. Even if we don't find it, using Rumble to find Jarsil can be really nice. Okay, sick. Okay, we've got the Evangel now. So all we need is all we need is a Recruiter of the Guard or a Guide of Souls. Just trying to debate whether you want a second Evangel here or a land. Okay, so it looks like... Well, I mean, it's not sure what we're up against here. Could be Devotion, could be Elves, could also be a mid-range deck, maybe. I think I'm going to get another land here, just because I think there's a chance we might use this Witch Enchanter as a disenchant effect if the opponent is on Devotion and they use, like, Wolfwiller Haven or Utopia Sprawl, for example. Okay, yeah, so they are on Devotion. They do use the Sprawl here. Fanatic of Rona. So the opponent can have a pretty explosive turn next turn. And we don't have a way to combo off. Obviously, all we need is one more card here. So I think what I'm going to do is Primal Prayers, and then I think we just need to slow the opponent down here. So I'm going to go set an upkeep stop and just flash in Evangel here during the upkeep to tap down the Utopia Sprawl here. And then, obviously losing the Evangel isn't ideal, but what we can do here is use one of the energy to tap down this land, then set a stop during the opponent's end step as well. And then use this Evangel during the end step, which then gives us Evangel to use during our hand next turn, which is very big. Not only because it enables us to just, at worst, put 2 more 3/1s into play, but if we find a Guide of Souls, it still enables us to combo off, which would be huge. Oh, wow, okay. Perfect. That's ideal. So now we just basically win the game, right? There's no way Devotion can beat this. So now we go Guide of Souls, and then we just cast as many Evangels as we want here. It's very important to set a stop during your end step. Okay, opponent just keeps it up, but what I would have done there, end step, set a stop, go for Evangel, and then during their upkeep, just tap down all of their lands and permanents to stop them casting anything. So here, I think Unstable Amulet is not only too slow, but also gets shut down by Khan. And then I think we want Apparition... Haywire Might, Spellbinder seems like it could be useful. Actually, we probably want Revoker here as well. And then, yeah, just cut Amulet entirely. Amulet is really nice in grindy matchups, but this matchup is all about racing, I think. So, yeah, I think I like all of them. All of those cards seem good at slowing the opponent down. Haywire might not seem like an obvious inclusion against Devotion, but if they have a turn 1 Utopia Sprawl, being able to take that out can often slow them down quite a lot. And also, if they get an powerful artifact off Khan, like I've lost with an earlier build of this deck to God Pharaoh's statue, having a cheap way to take that out is very important. Okay, so here we have the combo. Obviously, we don't have it until turn 4 because we don't have Malevolent Rumble, but this is definitely a keep. And then I think we can put back a Confluence here because we can go Attune with Aether on turn 1, obviously, and the extra energy, the extra energy could be useful later in the game. So I'm going to leave with the Attune with Aether here. There's maybe an argument to going with a Guide of Souls on turn 1 just because Devotion is very unlikely to be able to kill it. Right, they don't typically run any removal until they can get Khan in play, and then usually at best if they're on straight mono green, the earliest they can use is Sky Sovereign, which is obviously pretty slow. Okay, so I think I'm definitely gonna play at least one of these Guide of Souls because I think there's very little risk. I think I'm gonna hold on to the second one though, so we get this down just as a blocker basically. If we want to trade with the Llanowar Elves, it basically just stops them from attacking slightly. Does get something else on the battlefield as well. Now, obviously, we need a 4th land here as well, but we don't even need to rely on top-decking one because we can use this Recruiter of the Guard here to tutor for a Witch Enchanter. So even if we don't draw like a Jarsoul that lets us slash back a Attune with Aether or a Harvest or something like that, we can just use Recruiter of the Guard here to find the 4th land. This is why I'm such a bigg fan of running Witch Enchanter in this deck, because it not only gives us main deck Disenchant, which definitely does come up in a few matchups, but being able to have a tutorable untapped land off Recruiter of the Guard is really, really sick in spots like this. Okay, looks like the opponent doesn't have a crazy turn here, which is so big, right? If they did have a really crazy turn, they could maybe set up getting a huge board and then using Khan to get a Chroma's Memorial, which would be able to kill us this turn, but we should be good to win here, right? They can attack, we'll just let the damage through, then we can just go Witch Enchanter, Primal Prayers, go super wide, and then just tap down all of their lands and creatures so that they can't do anything during their turns. And then we go Primal Prayers. Going to get down the second Guide of Souls first, just so we, get double life, get double energy. But it shouldn't really end up mattering here. Just go Scardian Evangel. And I think I'll probably make about 15 or so. And then, I guess this doesn't really matter. Like, we could do this during the opponent's upkeep if we really wanted to, because Devotion doesn't really have anything they can do to stop us. Definitely a good matchup because Devotion doesn't really have that many ways to interact, but still got there, which is nice. Okay, so we're against Jotaro, who are basically always on Is It Wizards, from my experience. Okay, so if they are having a hand with double Galvanic Discharge is sick. They're not on Gigantha though, so maybe not. Okay, no, it looks like they are. Sweet. So this hand should be pretty good against Wizards, right? Definitely going to shock in this Stomping Ground on turn 1. Definitely want to hold open the Galvanic Discharge here, and then we can either go for Rumble or Amulet on turn 2. Obviously depends on what we draw here, though. So definitely Galvanic Discharge here, take out the Symmetry Sage. I think Discharge is a big addition to Is It Wizards as well. I think it's just significantly better than Shoverside, which a lot of those lists were running anyway. Okay, so we did find the 3rd land, which is really big. So I think it's usually just better to go for Rumble on turn 2. There's just way more upside of doing this, right? If we hit Primal Prayers, which we did, then that potentially allows us to combo off if we find a Guide of Souls off the top. If we had Guide of Souls in the graveyard, we could also go Primal Prayers into Jarsoul, use Jarsoul to get back Guide of Souls, and then combo off with the Evangel, which is a line I've done quite a few times. But either way, we can just go Primal Prayers into Jarsoul anyway, right? And then, flashback and Attune with Aether, and then we could potentially use Sigardian Evangel to tap down the opponent's lands during the upkeep. Because we would have 4 energy, right? So we could just, use a couple to tap down the opponent's lands, then, use the last one during the end step, and still have them during our turn in case we draw Guide of Souls, or in case we, or to just cast it during our turn anyway. So this is also why I like having a second Plains here. in the deck, so that if we do just want to use the Sigardian Evangels fairly, we can, have a second place to be able to cast 2 Evangels next turn. So during the upkeep, just going to flash in the Evangel here, tap down probably the red source first. Okay, yeah, opponent just keeps up. Looks like they were missing land drops there potentially, but yeah, this just shows Primal plus Evangel is kind of messed up just using it fairly anyway. So this is definitely a matchup we want the 4 shover sides, and then probably going to cut the Unstable Amulets. And I also think I want the Tajik here. Typically Tajik you don't want in matchups where you're just about racing, but I think post-sideboard against Wizards, you probably want Tajik, because, it can come down to quite a grindy game. Actually, thinking about it, maybe I should have trimmed on Attune with Aethers rather than Abundant Harvests. I like keeping an Attune with Aethers with, especially Unstable Amulet, but maybe with cutting Unstable Amulet, the Abundant Harvest is probably a little bit better. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on that. Okay, so opponent leads on the Soulscar Mage. Definitely going to Galvanic Discharge here. Gets us an energy back. Don't have to worry about them growing it with Prowess at instant speed. Finding a third land drop is huge here as well, because now we can go, at worst, Recruiter of the Guard, find a 4th land drop in Witch Enchanter, and then cast the Tajik. So here, I'm going to cast the Evangel. Obviously, we could hold this for Primal Prez to combo off with, but I feel like it's important to get board presence, and at worst we can still, if we find a 4th land, we can still go Primal Prez into Guide of Souls into Recruiter of the Guard and combo off that way as well. And I feel like, especially against Wizards, you don't just want to do nothing on turn 2 whatsoever, but I can see the argument, because if we do miss our 4th land drop here, then that does mean that we can't combo off, which is a little bit awkward, but I don't know, I stand by still doing something on this turn, and we're relatively likely to be able to find the 4th land anyway. So here we're just going to use the Recruiter of the Guard, just get a Sigardian Evangel here. Obviously we could get a Cruel Harpooner, but we want to be able to at least represent using the combo next turn, right? I think there's a reasonable chance they could tap out here, in which case we can just go Primal Prayers and then just combo off. Now, having said that, I have been tempted to trim the Cruel Harpooner. I think it is useful, and it has won me a couple games, actually, but there is the risk, especially against our deck. The Wizards' opponent is often incentivized to hold removal up to stop us comboing off, right? Killing the Guide of Souls here would stop us from comboing, for example. And if you use Cruel Harpooner, obviously the opponent can kill the Harpooner in response to the fight trigger going on the stack. So it's definitely not a foolproof way, but it is a very nice tool, especially against Symmetry Sage, Stickshot Show Off, and Balmor if people are still running that as well. So I still like it as a one-off, but if there's another card that I want to run as a tutor target, I think that and probably Elite Spellbinder are the cards that I'm looking to cut. Okay, so it looks like the opponent's tapping out here, which is huge for us. So we should just be able to win next turn, right? So now we can go Primal Prayers, Guide of Souls, Sigardian Evangel, and in this instance, I'm going to be making a lot of copies of Evangel here because, against a lot of decks, you can just guaranteed or almost always guaranteed shut them off doing anything on their turn by tapping down all their lands and creatures, but obviously Wizards is a deck that runs a lot of burn spells, so if they kill the Guide of Souls in response to our upkeep Evangel, they can just cut us off, tapping down all their stuff. So I'm going to make a lot of copies here. So if the opponent doesn't scoop, I might just edit this out because I'm just going to be making, 15 to 20 copies. So if they don't scoop, I'm just going to quickly edit this, I think. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here, right? We're at 40 life. We have 28 Evangels in play. Attacking with the Recruiter, and then, we set a stop during our upkeep. Let all these triggers go on the stack. Flash in this Evangel in response, and then we won't discard the copy we get off this until the next end step, which is the opponent's end step. And then, once those triggers are on the stack, you want to click off setting your stop so that all the other triggers resolve without you having to click through all of them. So once you've cast that last Evangel, make sure you unclick the stop during your end step. So those 20 odd Evangel triggers can just go through automatically. And then now during the opponent's upkeep, I think we prioritize taking out the Arcanist. In certain matchups you want to go after the lands first, but in this specific matchup, obviously, shutting their creatures off. The obvious risk here is the opponent can kill our Guide of Souls now, in which case out of all their permanents, they probably want to prioritize taking out the Arcanist here. So I don't know if the opponents, they could have been alt-tabbed while we were doing all those 30 Evangels. They could have also alt-F4'd if they know they've lost. Or they could be debating whether to crack one of these lands to dig towards a burn spell, maybe, I'm not sure. But either way, plan here is to just tap down the Arcanist, tap down the Symmetry Sage, tap down the Soulscar Mage, and then just tap down each of their lands. And then, we should basically win anyway, right? The only way we lose in this spot is if they've got main deck Brotherhood's End, which, that might be why they're not running Gigantha, but that seems a very bad main deck card to be running in Wizards. And if they're not running that, I guess we're post-Sideboard now, aren't we? But either way, if they don't have a burn spell for Guide of Souls, we can just tap down their lands anyway, which just shuts off sweepers as an out. So it looks like the opponent might time out here, in which case we don't need to do this because it should just pass straight to their end step anyway. But I've had it sometimes where they do get a timer back later in the turn, so I'll do that. And I also want to show you how this works anyway, right? If they were still here, what you would need to do. So again, against Wizards, you want to prioritize their creatures tapping down, but in certain other matchups where they can't necessarily attack around your stuff, it's best to go after their lands first to mitigate the amount of stuff that they can do. Tap down their creatures, tap down their lands. And then if you're playing, again, we should just be guaranteed to win here, but I think it's useful to show you what to do for other scenarios where the opponent still maybe has stuff up here. So what I like doing is also setting a stop during the opponent's end step. So when it goes to the end step to discard the final copy that you get from your upkeep Evangels, you can then cast another one during your end step to still have them available during your turn. You can effectively just loop them repeatedly if you keep setting stops during your end step and flashing the Evangel in response to the last trigger. So they draw cards. Okay, yeah, those just skip straight to their end step. Then in response to the triggers, just flash the Evangel in again, and now we'll have Evangel available during our turn. Now again, if you've comboed off and tapped down all the opponent's stuff, this shouldn't really matter, but it's it's useful to know how Evangel can work in these spots. But either way, you're going to deal a ton of damage to the opponent, and winning the Wizards matchup always feels really good, because I think it's still one of the best decks in the format. Okay, so we're on the play here, and yeah, I think we can keep this one. We've effectively got 4 lands because of the Attune with Aethers, but Malevolent Rumble is always a good turn to play, and we've got Harvest that we can use to find non-lands. Plus, Attune with Aether with Unstable Amulet is a really good way to keep the cards flowing anyway, right? So even though we do have quite an essentially land-heavy hand, Attune with Aether plus Unstable Amulet is really solid. Tamio, interesting. So not sure what the opponent's on here, but we're definitely going to Rumble. And obviously there's maybe an argument to getting Guide of Souls if we had a Primal Prez, but I really like going for Jarsel here, because at worst, if the Jarsel resolves, we can Jarsel and get back the Guide of Souls from the graveyard anyway. Opponent doesn't attack with the Tamio, not sure why. So here we can't, unfortunately, go, a green cantrip into Jarsel. But we can just go Jarsel here and get back Guide of Souls, which seems pretty nice. And then, next time we can use Jarsel to flash back Malevolent Rumble, which is really powerful. Right, that not only fills the graveyard, potentially gets a Recruiter in there for the next turn, but also just is really good at digging towards what we need. Primal Prez would be excellent here. So the opponent is keeping mana up, so it makes me think they're probably on a control deck here. But the fact they played Hallowed Fountain tapped makes me think they don't have a 2-mana counterspell here. Okay, that was kind of a whiff. We did get a land, and, we do trigger the Guide of Souls. Definitely attacking with the Jarsel here, because I would quite like, to trigger them doing something. Not going to use the energy here while we have the Unstable Amulet, though. And I feel like I'm confident jamming the Unstable Amulet here. They could obviously use Archmage's Charm, but if they have a No More Lies, we have 3 mana available via the Eldrazi tokens. So we're going to activate the Unstable Amulet here, and then I think I'm just going to play the Stomping Ground now, because now we can just play 2 of the cantrips we've got. Could have also played the Copperline Gorge here and then just waited until next turn to play the the Stomping Ground, but you know we're getting an untapped land off this Attune with Aether anyway, so I don't think there's any real rush to get the Copperline Gorge in play. And now we found Primal Prez, which is sick. So if the opponent taps out for a sweeper or something here, we can just go Primal Prez into the combo and just combo off here. Wow, they just draw 2 off the Archmage's Charm. I guess that flips the Tamiyo, makes sense, but if they don't have a 1-mana counterspell here, they're in trouble, right? Because they've already played their land for the turn. I guess they don't know what we're on. Maybe they're not familiar. Or I guess they don't know that we have the combo here either. But yeah, now we should just be good to go off. I'm going to play the Plains here just in case they have Spell Pierce. Even if they have Spell Pierce, we have 2 mana available anyway. And then we can just use this spare mana to go for Guide of Souls and save us an energy. And then again, I think this is a matchup where I'm going to make a lot of Evangels here because they could conceivably have 2 instant speed removal spells to take out the Guide of Souls. So if they don't scoop up here again, I might just edit so you don't just see me making like, 15 copies of Evangel. But yeah, matchups where the opponent is likely to have instant speed removal are matchups where you do want to prioritize making a lot of copies during your main phase. Obviously, you still want to set stops during your upkeep, during your end step and during the opponent's upkeep to be able to tap down all the opponent's lands if they don't have instant speed removal. But in spots like this where we have 2 Guide of Souls, it puts a lot of pressure because they have to have 2 removal spells. Okay, yeah, opponent just scoops up. So against control, definitely want to cut the Galvanic Discharges for Esper Sentinels here. Tajik is also, excellent in these sorts of matchups. If it resolves, it's so difficult for the opponent to deal with because Supreme Verdict doesn't answer it. Divine Purge doesn't answer it really either. And then, I probably should have bought an Elite Spellbinder as well. But honestly, Spellbinder is a card I've been thinking about cutting. I think it could be very important against combo decks. So if something like Charbelcher is very popular, then I could see bringing it in. But even for that, we've got Phyrexian Revoker, which is 1 mana cheaper and probably better anyway, right? Because you can hit a Charbelcher in their hand and they can just draw another one potentially. So this hand, we do obviously have the combo here, but it is also a little bit slow. But I think I'm going to keep it, right? I don't think we can mulligan these sorts of hands. It is kind of risky into counterspells potentially though. And because of that, I'm just going to jam Evangel. I don't think against a control deck you can afford to hold on to all your combo pieces and then wait to just cast Primal Prayers on turn 4. But having said that, we also drew Guide of Souls here, so now we still have the combo, even if we cast the Evangel out early here. And like I said, against the control deck, which is what I assume we're up against here, I think it's very important to get threats down early to force the opponent to have to answer something, right? If you just do nothing, you're just playing straight into their game plan. And I could conceivably see just casting Recruiter next turn to try and find Tajik here. Because again, Primal Prayers, getting the combo off is a nice way to win in these sorts of matchups, but not curving out because of that seems like you're going to just lose to counterspells, right? So I think I'm going to attack him with the Evangel here, and then cast Recruiter, tutor Tajik, and then it does make these Primal Prayers in our hands not great, but I think they're likely to get countered anyway, right? And if they do resolve, then the opponent's in real trouble because we can cast all of our creature instant speed, and if we do happen to draw an Evangel off the top, they're in real trouble. Wow, they go for Omen of the Sea. Okay, so interesting. Maybe I might just use Recruiter to tutor Evangel here then, actually. I was thinking about going for Tajik, but with 2 Primal Prayers, I think I might just go for Evangel here, because then even if the Primal Prayers get countered, we can still just use Evangel fairly, right? This is the big advantage of having all of your combo pieces be good individually, because even in spots like this, we can just go, cast 2 Evangels, tap down 2 of your lands, and then they're in real trouble anyway, right? Okay, so I definitely going to attack first here. Try and bait out removal maybe. If they have a Wandering Emperor, that would be really nice, and then we can just combo off main phase 2. I'm just going to jam the Primal Prayers here, but we've got a backup. If they use a counterspell, we've still got 4 power in play, which is going to be difficult for them to deal with. And if, this is the kind of turn where I think it's important to bait out counterspells, because if we don't do anything super powerful and they go for like a Deluge or something, then, or a Wandering Emperor, then, we're letting them do their stuff proactively. Wow, okay, they scry, so now we can just come off instant speed, right? This is why I set a stop during the end step, because I thought they might use a Deluge or that sort of similar effect. So now, again, we're up against the deck with instant speed removal, so I'm going to make quite a few copies here, maybe 15 or 16 or so. And then, during their upkeep, if they have a removal, they have to use it on Guide of Souls to stop us tapping down all their lands. And if they do that, that might mean that they don't have enough mana to use a sweeper. Oh, okay, opponent just sweeps it up, so we got there, nice. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, I think we can keep this one right, especially if we can find a... Well, we need a second green for the Primal Prez, but if we can find a Primal Prez off this Malevolent Rumble, we have what we need to combo off straight away. And I oftentimes want to be holding on to Guide of Souls for later in the game, but when we have both Recruiter of the God and Sir Guardian of Angel, I think we can just afford to run it out. Okay, so opponent has Portable Hull, which is a little bit unfortunate. Okay, Jarsil's a really nice pickup here, so now we don't mind getting a land off this. So we didn't find the Primal Prez, obviously, but now we can go land into Jarsil, potentially. Unfortunately, we didn't hit a 1-drop in the graveyard, though. We would have loved to have seen another 1-mana instant or sorcery to be able to use with the Jarsil here. Okay, opponent casts Thopterist, so... Oh, wow. Hold on. We found Primal Prez. I was going to say we need to kill the Thopterist, but we could instead go Primal Prez, then Recruiter of the Guard during their end step to get Guide of Souls and go off next turn, but I think I like going for Discharge first here, because then we can get excess energy to enable us to combo off the entire turn, and we can also use this Discharge to gain extra 3 energy, and then next turn we can hopefully use Jarsil to get back the Rumble, and then go for Primal Prez, and then combo off. The one risk of doing that line is it opens us up to counter spells, right? Because the opponent can now potentially use like a Metallic Rebuke against the Primal Prez, but that would be the same if we waited a turn to combo off anyway, I think. Okay, so they do represent Metallic Rebuke here. I'm going to lead on the Rumble and see... Okay, so the opponent gets priority when we cast the Rumble, so maybe it would have been better for me to... Sorry, just trying to think which card to pick. I think we want to prioritize getting Guide of Souls here. But yeah, maybe we should have gone for the Primal Prez last turn just to avoid playing around counter spells a little bit better. I think I'll attack here, just in case they have another blue spell, which would tap them out. So I actually don't... Now we've got Guide of Souls, I'm just going to jam the Recruiter of the Guard, because it's obvious to me they have a Metallic Rebuke, right? They're not getting a stop for anything else than when we cast a spell. So Arena's kind of giving away that they have a counter spell here. So I want to bait out the Metallic Rebuke on this Recruiter of the Guard so that we can resolve the Primal Prez. Although having... we do obviously have a second Primal Prez as a backup here, but the issue in this point in the game is that... If we use the Eldrazi and we don't draw a 4th land, we can't play the second Primal Prez. And the other nice thing about getting the Recruiter of the Guard countered there is it's in the graveyard for us to be able to use with Jarsil next turn. So if they do counter Primal Prez and we get the Recruiter of the Guard back, we could actually use Jarsil on 4 to get back the Primal Prez, which is pretty sweet. So here, I'm just going to jam the Primal Prez here. Okay, sick. They don't have any counter spells. So I'm going to lead on the Jarsil here. Get back the Recruiter of the Guard, and then we can get a second Guide of Souls, and that should basically just lock up the game here, I imagine, right? The only way they could really stop us here is killing Guide of Souls, and now we have a backup, so yeah, definitely an interesting choice, the turn that we played the Jarsil and the Galvanic Discharge. Maybe it was better to just jam the Primal Prez and just try and combo off the following turn, because that does play around counter spells a little bit better, but... It looks like it should still work out here, right? We just play a bunch of Evangels here, and then, we can just tap down all the opponent's stuff the following turn, just cut them off. Yeah, okay, opponent just scoops it up. So, against Affinity, we do have some nice tools. We got the Haywire Might, Skyclave Apparition also seems nice here, and then I think we also want to bring the Tajik here. This is a matchup where that can really shine, because they don't really have great answers to it outside of maybe Fragment Reality. I've seen a few builds running that. Unstable Amulet could be good. Phyrexian Revoker, I'm also kind of tempted to bring in for Retrofit a Foundry, but it looks like they're running Kappa Cannoneer builds, which is, the main threat. I think we're just more interested in racing in these sorts of matchups. So typically, when I'm figuring out what I want to cut, the usual cuts are Unstable Amulet if it's not a super grindy matchup. Obviously, Affinity can be a grindy matchup, but for the most part, I think it's largely racing. We cut Galvanic Discharge if we're up against a deck not running many creatures like Control or Charbelcher or something like that. And then if we've already cut all the unstable amulets and we need more stuff to cut, or, you know, we've already cut all the galvanic discharges and we're looking for extra stuff to cut, I usually trim on either Abundant Harvest or Attune with Aether after that, depending on whether we keep Unstable Amulet in. If we've got Unstable Amulet in, I usually like prioritizing keeping in Attune with Aether, but if we're cutting all the Unstable Amulets, I usually trim on Attune with Aether and keep Abundant Harvest in, because it's just the more generically powerful card when we don't need to prioritize getting the energy as much. Okay, so just Foundry on turn 1 is great. I was really worried about Esper Sentinel there. So here, I think we're going to go for non-land off the Abundant Harvest, because we've already got Witch Enchanter here as our effective 4th land, right? We've already got our 4 lands here. And Rumble is a really nice pickup, because now... okay, so... I mean, it looks like they've probably got a counterspell here, but I'm happy to just jam the Rumble. Oh, well, they don't. And now we should just be good at... I mean, obviously we can't combo off immediately next turn, but if the Primal Prayers resolves, then we can just go Recruiter during their end step, get Guide of Souls, and then manually cast the Guide of Souls and go off with Guardian Evangel next turn. Opponent is playing quite slowly though, which makes me think they probably have a counterspell. I don't know if they would use Metallic Rebuke on the Malevolent Rumble. If I was my opponent, I probably would, but... You know, it's kind of a new card, so I think there is a chance that people undervalue it. You know, they think, oh, I won't counter this, I'll save my counter spells for the Primal Prayers, which makes sense. So because the opponent is playing super slowly and leaving open mana here, I'm just going to jam the Witch Enchant, which I think they might counter here. Because us taking out their Retrofitter Foundry when they've been so slow to commit to the board does really limit their board presence. Yeah, okay, they do have the Rebuke. But I think that's fine because... they need another counterspell for the Primal Prayers here, and if they don't have it, then it's going to be really difficult for them to stop us. Obviously, they do have some counterplay to it, especially if they do have Fragment Reality, for example. So here, again, they're playing super conservatively. I imagine they must have another counterspell here, or it just doesn't really make sense. Or I guess they could also have Kappa Cannoneer, potentially. Okay, there is Fragment Reality, so I'm very glad that I went for the Unstable Amulet first. Wow, and they hit the one off Haywire Might. That's pretty good for us. So now we can just take out the Retrofitter Foundry, which is going to be a problem for them if they have got Kappa Cannoneer just stuck in their hands, because that obviously is just going to take another artifact off the battlefield. But it looks like they kept quite an interactive hand, counterspells, you know, interaction. And the really nice thing now is that with the 2 energy that we've got off the Unstable Amulet, even if they have a Fragment Reality, we can still combo off at instant speed. You know, now we've got 4 energy. Because if we go Primal Prayers and they Fragment Reality... okay, Jarstle's a nice pickup. Again, I think I'm just going to slow roll it here. Because they're not pressuring us, and I feel like they must have more counter spells or more interaction here, right? And I would rather burn all of their counter spells on other threats and then, you know, finish them off with the Primal Prayers. Plus, we're approaching 7 mana here, which would allow us to play around Metallic Rebuke. Okay, there's Retrofitter Foundry. Okay, it doesn't even look like they have the Kappa Cannoneer, which is obviously good for us. Interesting. So I think with Guide of Souls in play, and the opponent is almost out of resources here, I'm not going to jam Primal Prayers again because I don't want to play into Metallic Rebuke when we don't need to afford... Well, you know, we don't really need to here. I'm just going to get Tajik here, actually, just so we have another backup. But yeah, the whole idea here is, if I wait another turn and play this Vantage tapped, next turn we have 7 mana, so even if they have Rebuke, we can still combo off. Oh no, okay, the last card is Iganjo. Okay, that's actually pretty annoying. I mean, my logic there was if they have a removal spell, then it doesn't matter regardless if we attack or not. I didn't consider Iganjo, but I don't think you can really afford to play around Iganjo in spots like this because it's a one-of, right? So now, unfortunately, we can't combo off here. If I had found a Guide of Souls off the Recruiter, then we could have done, but... yeah, maybe I should have got a Guide of Souls off the Recruiter there, because if they do have a removal spell like a Fragment Reality, for example, then that would cut us off the combo. So that was maybe a misplay on my part, but I still think we can just win with Tajik here, potentially, because the main way they're going to race us is with 4/4s, and Tajik having Indestructible is really solid here. And then obviously Apparition is a very nice draw, because we can just take out the Foundry. Means they can only get 1/4/4 off their board here. So yeah, looking back on it, maybe I'm supposed to get Guide of Souls off Recruiter just to play around a removal spell a bit better. But again, it wouldn't surprise me if a deck like Affinity brought in something like a Dovin's Veto against us, and if we fetch Guide of Souls and then Primal Prayers gets countered by a hard counter spell like that, then we're in more trouble. Whereas at least like Tajik here is really solid, right? It's going to be very difficult for them to beat without a Fragment Reality or a Kappa Cannoneer. And also, right, we can use Evangel just fairly with Primal Prayers. We've already got 5 energy. If we go up to 7... Oh, okay. I was going to say we can just cast 7 copies of Evangel anyway, but now we've got Guide of Souls. We can just combo off anyway, right? And it's, you know, Arena's giving away. They don't have anything here. They don't have priority. So yeah, we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, I think we can keep this a little bit land heavy, but we can obviously use Harvest to guarantee an on land and hopefully flash it back with Jostle as well. Okay, so it looks like we're against humans here. Very happy to not see Esper Sentinel on turn 1. That would be a bit of a nightmare for our hand, although I guess we could just wait until turn 2 to play Harvest and then just cast Jostle the following turn, but... Okay, Coppercoat Vanguard, that's fine. Definitely going to go for Rumble on turn 2 here. Interesting. So I think I'm going to get Recruiter here and then bin the Guide of Souls, because that means that we should then be able to combo off next turn, hopefully. If they don't have something like Thalia, we should be able to win, because we can go Primal Prayers, cast Jostle, bring back Guide of Souls from the graveyard, then cast Recruiter to search Evangel, and then just combo off. So this is going to be a turn 3 win, which is pretty sick. You know, there's a lot of different ways that Malevolent Rumble can enable the turn 3 kill. So here we go, Jostle. Flash back the Guide of Souls from the graveyards. Then just go for Recruiter. Into Evangel. And I'm going to make quite a few copies here, just because Humans is a deck that can force through quite a lot of damage. Although having said that, we're obviously going to be able to tap down all their stuff here. So, although the Mantis Rider does have a Ward 1. But again, the other really nice thing about this combo is you also essentially gain infinite life. So you can just put yourself out of range of any creature damage you could possibly take. So yeah, I don't think Humans is likely to have any outs to this, even if we didn't tap down all this stuff. So we probably don't need to make a ton of these here, but you know, I think you should always make at least a few over lethal just to be safe, just in case they are running something like a Fragment Reality in the main deck, because with Wizards rolling around as the best deck in the format, I wouldn't be surprised if they had some interaction, and they can deny us the Evangel loop during their upkeep. Okay, no, opponent just scoops it up. So against Humans, this is definitely a matchup where we want the Shover Sides and the Tajik for sure. I also think I like the Apparition here, especially because they could have hate cards as well. Unstable Amulet probably a little slow here, and then probably going to trim a couple of Attune with Aethers here. Just because, you know, out of the two, I think, you know, once you trim the Unstable Amulets, the next cards I look to cut are Harvest or Attune with Aether. I don't like going below 6 because obviously we only have 20 lands in the deck, so we do want a high density. But when we're cutting Unstable Amulet, I think Abundant Harvest is generally more useful, right? Attune with Aether is good because it provides us with extra energy, which is good, you know, which is especially good alongside the Unstable Amulet. But without that, I think Harvest is generally better. Apart from Attune with Aether does provide some color fixing as well. So this sounds interesting. We don't have green mana, which could be an issue, but we can go Guide of Souls into Evangel, into Recruiter, into Tajik, which seems pretty good. I think the opponent is very likely to, you know, they're unlikely to have good ways to beat Tajik, to be honest, right? They could have Skyclave Apparition. They could also have Brutal Cathar, maybe. Okay, they're running Reflector Mage, sure. So that bounces the Guise of Souls. Okay, we drew the Tajik here, so I'm just going to run out the Sigardian Evangel here, because that can just trade with the Reflector Mage. I just want to soak up as much damage as possible, because we definitely have the inevitability in this matchup, both with Tajik and with the combo as well. Oh no, okay, I maybe messed up here. I completely forgot that Peddler was one of the cards they could run, and if they take the Witch Enchanter here, we could be in real trouble. I mean, having said that, if we draw an untapped land, especially a green source, then I think we're good. But yeah, I definitely should have thought about. Yeah, I should have thought about Juggernaut Peddler. I should have played the Witch Enchanter as a land. To be honest, I should probably play the Witch Enchanter as a land on turn 1 because they could have cast Juggernaut Peddler last turn. So that's a real problem. So definitely gonna take the trade here. I want to keep them off the board as much as possible. Yikes, yeah, okay. So if, had we played the Witch Enchanter as a land, we could have gone Recruiter of the Guard this turn, and then we would be in a much better position. Okay, so going to block the Avacyn's Pilgrim here. Hopefully we draw a land. Could have also blocked with the Guide of Souls. Okay, if we're not going to draw a land, drawing a playable card is at least better, but we're starting to fall behind here quite a bit. And I think I am just going to block with the Guide of Souls here, because if we do draw a green source, we can then go Jar Soul, bring back the Guide of Souls, and then the following turn, if we survive, bring back the Evangel. Okay, so they choose not to attack with the Peddler. Like I said, I'm going to block with the Guide of Souls here, just in case we draw a green source, then we can actually utilise the Jar Soul the turn it comes down here. Yikes. Okay, yeah, we're getting massively punished. So that was definitely just a punt on my part. I should have just played the Witch Enchanter as a land. Okay, and they've got Collector's Company. I was going to say, I was kind of surprised they didn't use the Waterlogged Grove the turn before. So yeah, almost certainly going to be dead here. I don't think there's anything we can draw that gets us back into this. Even if we draw a green source here, assuming they don't... they take the Jar Soul anyway. But yeah, even if we drew a green source, we're probably still not able to stabilize. So we block the Peddler, but we go down to 4, and the opponent has way more than lethal. Okay, we missed the land again. So that was probably a punt on my part. I mean, we did also get pretty unlucky not drawing lands off the top, so I'm not sure we would have got there even if we had played the Witch Enchanter as a land, because we did just miss the 4th land drop loads of times in a row, and I think our main way of winning that game is via either Jar Soul, which we didn't have a green source for, or Tajik, which we wouldn't have found the 4th land for, or Primal Prayers, which we would need both a 2nd green and the 4th land. So I think we got, a combination of a mistake and unlucky that game as well, not drawing any lands off the top. But yeah, big on the play in game 3. I do feel confident about this matchup. Okay, I think we can keep this. Having 2 Confluence is pretty sketchy, but having Shove Aside on turn 1 into potential Jar Soul on turn 3 seems pretty good to me. Obviously, again, if we miss lands, it's going to be pretty awkward, but Recruiter of the Guard can fetch Witch Enchanter here if we find the 3rd and we need the 4th land, for example. And we obviously have a lot of ways to find lands off Abundant Harvest, off Attune with Aether. Interesting. So they don't play anything on turn 1, but they shock in the Temple Gardens. So what does that mean? Maybe a Fragment Reality? I think I'm just going to jam the Sigardian Evangel here, because this gets a threat in play, allows us to potentially race, allows us to get a blocker in play, and also means that we now have a 2-drop in the graveyard for Jar Soul, right? I would have probably held mana open had we been on the draw, because then we can use Shove Aside at instant speed and then cast Jar Soul the following turn to use it again if they cast 2 creatures. But obviously we're on the play here, so Shove Aside is only sorcery speed. So having a backup Jar Soul is pretty nice here, but if they take Shove Aside, we don't... Oh, okay, they take a Jar Soul. I'm pretty surprised about that. I would have thought they would just go for the Shove Aside here, because then we don't have anything 1 mana to rebuy with the Jar Soul. So we've got a few options this turn. I think I like just going for Shove Aside here. We could obviously go Recruiter of the Guard, fetch Tajik in case we find a 4th land, which would be a really nice curve out, but if we don't find a land, that's pretty awkward. And here we can go take out the Juggernaut Peddler and then potentially Galvanic Discharge a creature they play. Okay, they're missing land drops, which is obviously unlucky for them. So here I'm just going to go for Recruiter, and I think I'm just going to search Tajik here, probably. Again, we could get Evangel in case we draw Primal Prayers, but I think they're really going to struggle to beat Tajik. Again, they could have Skyclave Apparition, which is a fairly clean answer, but it looks like they're running 5-color humans here, right? We've seen a lot of lands that can only tap for mana for humans, and so those, it's going to be difficult to cast Skyclave Apparition in a deck like that. Okay, so we're both missing land drops. Obviously looks a bit more punishing for the opponent here, because they're obviously stuck on 2 lands. I think I'm going to attack first here. And then probably just cast Guide of Souls and pass, right? I don't really see there's much point casting Jarsoul here when they obviously have something. They're holding up at instant speed. Yeah, they have Fragment Reality. I mean, having Jarsoul Fragment Reality is, completely fine because we get another creature, but we don't have anything to use with the Jarsoul, and I'd rather have mana open for Galvanic Discharge. Okay, Reflector Mage is actually good here because no matter what they bounce, both of these creatures provide good value. So here, just going to use the Galvanic Discharge, take out the Reflector Mage. And then hopefully we draw a land. Oh, should have specified untapped. But at least now we've got Discharge in the graveyard. We can just use the Jarsoul and just cast the Discharge to gain 3 energy. Which we don't really have uses for the energy right now, unless the opponent plays a really big creature. Like, I guess if they played an Adeline now, we'd at least be able to kill it with the Jarsoul, right? Kill it with the Galvanic Discharge. Okay, opponent passes with mana open, so this is probably a Collected Company if I had to guess. We could harvest first, naming land, but if we find a fast land, that we wouldn't be able to cast Tajik this turn. So they probably should have Collected Company before combat, if they're running Reflector Mage, right? Because they could have bounced the Tajik. Now we can bring Evangel back and forces them to cast the company before attacks, which is nice because we'll have full information going into our combat step here. So Reflector Mage on the Tajik will be a little bit rough, but we're at least guaranteed the first creature off it. And they have a mana confluence here as well, so if we can put them down to a point where they can't tap that would deny them mana even further. Oh, they're also running Kite Soul Larcenist, interesting. And Thalia will make the creature enter tapped, but that's actually probably fine because we would be forced to just suicide attack with it anyway. So I don't think we have great attacks here, right? If we attack with the Recruit of the Guard, they just eat it. If we attack with the Tajik, they can just cleanly block with the Larcenist. So losing the Jarsoul is a little bit annoying here, but we do get a treasure token, which means that we can cast Galvanic Discharge at instant speed if we wanted to here. Again, not sure how much use there is doing it during our turn as opposed to the opponent's, unless they have a trigger that's going to grow their creatures. Okay, Mantis Rider is a reason why I would do it during their turn, just to deny them the 3 damage. But obviously, for the most part, if you have a treasure token, it's almost always better to wait until your turn, just because you see what you draw. There's a chance you might not end up using the treasure token anyway. But obviously, in a situation like this, where it's going to save us 3 damage, it's worth doing during their turn, I think. Because even though I think we're pretty firmly ahead, they can potentially race, right? Humans is a deck that can force through a lot of damage out of nowhere. But here, I'm just going to go for Evangel. We can tap down the Thalia. We can't tap down both their creatures because Kite Soul Larcenist has Ward. If we had the 5th land, that would definitely be what I'd do. Maybe we should have tapped down the Thalia first here, actually, in case they have Mana Tithe. But, you know, I very, very much doubt they're playing Mana Tithe in a 5-color Humans deck. Yeah, okay. So now we can tap down the Thalia. Okay, they do have use for the white mana, so they do take out the Tajik. What do we want to fetch here? Maybe Apparition, maybe Evangel. We've already got an Evangel, though. Could also just get a Witch Enchanter as a land. That could be good, especially because these mana confluences are dealing us quite a lot of damage. And then that means that if we draw another untapped land next turn, we can potentially tap down 3 things with Evangel. So if we attack with everything here, then they have to block the Evangel, right? And then that also puts them down to 1, which, like I said, they've got that confluence there. This basically just Stone Rains their confluence because they just die if they tap it for mana here. So I feel pretty confident. I don't think there's any way they can force through 10 damage in 1 turn. Famous last words. They are running Mantis Rider as well, but again, they can't cast it without confluence. So yeah, we ended up getting there. Nice.